We're back from recess and we'll proceed with agenda item 5.01, the approval of the minutes from the April 1st, April 8th, and April 16th board meetings. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Shoemaker made the motion. Mr. Harrison made the second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes 7-0. We'll now move into the board chair and superintendent comments. I just wanted to say that just as we had a lot of recognitions tonight, the board members have been enjoying the end of year celebrations, including the Teacher of the Year, although we hate to be having you step down. Yeah. But we kept the same name, which is interesting. Kate, look left. We had the retirement banquet recently, and we also have early college, which I might be stealing some of your notes, I don't know. We have the early college graduating this weekend, so a lot of things coming up, which is kind of exciting, and then, of course, culminate with the all of the graduations, the 8 in June on 2 days. So board members will see a lot of each other. Until then, share a lot of meals together, and the celebrations will continue this week with a few of the other departments. So, Dr. Louder?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week we celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week. The 2,400 teachers that work in Cabarrus County Schools are the backbone of the school district, and we just want to say thank you to all of our teachers for everything they do for all of our students here in Cabarrus County. We also celebrated National School Nurse Day last week on Wednesday. So we say thank you to our school nurses for their dedication to our students. There are still many, many districts in North Carolina that don't have any school nurses. And Dr. Winkler, one of our former superintendents, and the Health Alliance were very forward thinking. So we're almost up to 20 years of having a nurse assigned at every school, and we don't know how we would operate without them. So we want to say thanks to them and to the county for funding that years ahead of when other people were there. New interactive boundary maps are now available on the district website. You can type in your address to see the school assignments for the 2020-2021 school year, as well as current assignments. We want to say congratulations to Rocky River Elementary School for its designation as a certifying organization for the President's Volunteer Service Award, or the PVSA. Rocky River students have logged more than 75 hours of volunteer time this school year that earned them a gold status. PVSA is the premier volunteer awards program, encouraging citizens to live a life of service through presidential gratitude and national recognition. Led by the Corporation for National and Community Service and managed in partnership with Points of Light, the PVSA program has continued under each administration since its founding in 2003 by the President's Council on Service and Civic Participation. We are approaching end-of-year testing time, and our schools will need proctors to help administer all the tests. If you're interested in volunteering as a proctor, please contact your school directly. And as Ms. Furtenbaugh said early, graduation season is upon us. We will celebrate our first graduates of the class of 2019 this coming Saturday, May 18th, with the Cabarrus-Kannapolis Early College High School graduation. You can find information about all the district's high school graduations on our graduation website. Please check that out, and thank you very much.
Okay, board members, we'll now move into item 7.01, the guest speakers. And it's all stated below on the agenda item, but I'll just read the beginning. In accordance with Board Policy 2310, a part of each business meeting will be set aside for citizens to address the board through public comment. Each speaker will receive 3 minutes to present comments. Sign-up will be available 30 minutes before the meeting begins, and the additional information there. So, Mr. Shaw, I do have a question, because in our policy, we only have the 3 minutes, and we have one group speaker. Does he still get 5, or are we at a steady 3 for everyone now? Yeah, it's not in the text here anymore. That's why I didn't remember if that got changed or not. Okay. Okay, so I will call the speakers in order of the sign-up. So Mr. Schuman.
For confirmation, would the group get 5 minutes?
Yes, okay. I think these are members of the group, but they'll have 3, and Mr. Schuman will have 5. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So here we are at the precipice of the very thing that our SOS group has been fighting for since that October day in 2017, when the CCS staff showed up at Beverly Hills for what was veiled as a community information session. Only later did we truly understand what that meeting was meant to do. To tamp down what would ultimately be a community up in arms once the decision to close Beverly Hills was disclosed, but that didn't work. We came out and we fought for our school. These meetings were held at several area schools in an effort to show that they were looking at multiple options for the Royal Oaks realignment decision to fill the additional seats, all the while showing maps closing Beverly Hills. So we got to work, and we continued to fight. Then a committee of mostly county employees and a few parents from each school was constructed and given 6 initial realignment scenarios to review. All of those scenarios showed Beverly Hills closing, so we continued to fight. That committee concluded, the staff recommended to the superintendent, who in turn recommended to the board, with no surprise, a scenario that closed Beverly Hills, and we continued to fight. We had over 60 speakers prior to the Christmas of 2017 address the board, including the esteemed outgoing mayor of Concord, city leaders, community activists, and of course, Beverly Hills neighbors and parents. There were signs in yards all over our city and on Christmas parade floats. We had businesses and doctors show support. Almost 5,000 signed our petition. We fought and fought and fought. The decision on Beverly Hills was then delayed 1 year by the superintendent due to concerns that more seats would be needed pending the new legislation on classroom sizes. That hasn't changed, by the way. Then came June 4th, 2018, a presentation by this CCS staff on the closure of Beverly Hills 8 months after that failed attempt at a community information session. That case was made to the past board, and that case was debunked. Point by point, page by page, word for word, by our S group in a rebuttal presentation. We have yet, to this day, received a response on the plethora of that information in our presentation, not from the staff and not from the members on this board who've opposed us. We showed how the North Carolina general statutes were not followed. We explained the Fanning-Howard report in detail. We gave a detailed explanation of how more buses and more transportation costs would easily outweigh any small operational savings of closing our school. We showed alternate construction cost estimates based on facts and data. We made the case that our school had not been maintained, only to be told that that wasn't true. Even though we all know that the county hasn't funded deferred maintenance needs at our school and others for decades, instead electing to spend money in other parts of the county on new schools for growth. We have at every instance, with every point we've made, kept the students first. So here we are, at the precipice of possibly seeing the last pin knocked down, the last pin standing that some on this staff and some on this board think is the golden ticket, the ultimate reason for closing a beloved neighborhood school. That pin is the head pin. The inability to build a school on such a difficult site. No way possible, we were told. Then we were told, even if possible, at astronomical cost to the county. No need to discuss what's best for students. It's just not in the budget, and you guys are just being a little too selfish. Well, we're a lot of things, but selfish is not one of them, and that's furthest from the truth. Maybe just as far from the truth as the staff's estimate of a new school at Beverly Hills. We have spent long nights and early mornings away from our families. We've put our jobs on hold, been sick and still fought, been tired and still cared enough to stay the course. We look forward to these results of the feasibility study. We look forward to finally learning the truth, and we hope that everyone here can handle that. Dr. Louder, in April of 2015, stated that smaller schools were better for students when asked prior to the vote on the larger Royal Oaks. Mr. Harrison challenged that ideal notion, and I quote, "I want to work in the real world. My heart is with you. But in the real financial material world we live in, what is the right answer?" Unfortunately, there was no feasibility study done for Royal Oaks, so we may not ever know. If this feasibility study shows it's possible to build 500 seats for comparable costs of other schools in the county, can we build the ideal? A school fit for the goals of a connected, walkable, bikeable community as envisioned by our city council. What if this study brings Mr. Harrison's real world together with Mr. Louder's ideal world? Can it then bring us all together? And if so, can we just stop fighting and get to work? Thank you.
David Burpo. Hello.
Hello. Good evening. On April 13, 2015, when asked about school size, a wise educator said, in part, "To be quite honest, in Cabarrus County, our elementary and middle schools are probably too big. A lot of places would not build an elementary school with more than 400 to 500 students. I think we've proven that we can make successful elementary schools that have 1,000 students in them. But if you're asking me what I think the ideal is, it's considerably smaller. That's what's best for the students." Those statements were made by an individual with 2 master's degrees and a PhD. They were made by an individual with more than 20 years as an educator, many of which were spent in leadership positions. Those statements were made by Dr. Chris Louder 13 days after being named interim superintendent of Cabarrus County Schools. Dr. Louder, your background in education is impressive, and I know you rely on research to shape your beliefs and vision to do what is best for the students. My point is, when you made those statements in 2015, it was your honest opinion based on empirical research and a lifetime spent in public education. I have no doubt that you are great at what you do, as evidenced by your achievements. However, I'm troubled at how quickly you tossed aside your beliefs and what is best for your students. Why? Instead of advocating for what's best for your students, you chose the opposite. You chose to go out on a public campaign disguised as a redistricting plan with members of your leadership team to make the case to close Beverly Hills. Committees were set up with community volunteers and fed biased information from the start. From day one, your staff attempted to influence those involved in the decision-making process to select only an option that closed Beverly Hills. Luckily, there was a community ready to challenge these biases and ask questions that should have been asked by some of the previous members of the Board of Education. Community members dedicated countless hours to fact-finding, data collection, speeches, and the rebuttal presentation that effectively halted all previous plans by the staff and by the previous board. I hope you all revisit those speeches and the presentation. It is safe to say that the entire community supports saving Beverly Hills. We are about to find out if it is possible. The results will be presented by a professional in this industry and will hopefully bring us closer to the truth. If the results meet the guidelines set by the previous board, it will be everyone's duty in this room to be real problem solvers and get to work advocating for what Dr. Louder said is ideal and best for the students. Thank you.
Michael Burpo? Michael Burpo? Hello.
Hello. Okay. Do I start?
You go.
Okay. Can I start?
You can start.
Good evening, Board of Education. Hello, my name is Michael Burpo, as you know, and I'm here to talk to you all about one specific idea. The idea is to give an elementary school a chance to show you that we can be more, and we have a potential to be an amazing elementary school. A chance to show that we can be more than a building made of brick. A chance to show that we can overcome any challenge that comes our way. This is all because of our community. Our community that is tied together by one thing, that school. That school is our home. And we are not going to stand our home being taken away from us. Which is why I just want to ask for one favor. Although I've already said that we can be more, we need time to prove it to you. Mr. Berg is going to present the results to see if my elementary school can be rebuilt. And I hope that after it, you can make an educated decision based on that data. Before I have to leave, I want to talk about some reasons why you want to send us away from our school. So a few days ago, in my hallways at our school, I saw a poster, and I thought it would be a good answer to one of these questions. The question that was asked was, what if something went wrong? The answer to that question is, you need to stop being afraid about what could go wrong, and start being excited about what could go right. Everything has a potential, and I know you can see that. At our school, me and my friends help the next generation or younger kids in our school in the mornings. Even if we don't want to do it, we know it's the right thing to do. So now, as the adults, you also know that it is your duty to provide the next generation with the best educational foundation possible in Cabarrus County. That means having options for families and diverse learners. From large schools to small neighborhood ones like Beverly Hills, there is a place for all. I am asking you to SOS save our schools. Goodbye, and thank you for your time.
Brenda Rakoff. Hello.
Good evening. It's nice to be here, and it's also a pleasure to speak to our two new board members. We're going on 2 years now talking about Beverly Hills Elementary School. My youngest had just finished first grade when this discussion started, and he will be in the 4th grade in the fall. We appreciate this board, and we appreciate the Board of Commissioners for funding this study that we are so eager to hear about tonight. But after tonight, it is time to make some decisions. Despite the uncertainty, our students and staff have been hard at work. They ignored the distractions and are not only excelling in science, math, and reading, they are exceeding expectations. You all should be very proud of what's happening at Beverly Hills Elementary School. These little champions are going to cross the finish line in June with achievements that are outstanding. I hope Cabarrus County staff and this Board of Education will publicly recognize the amazing success that's taking place. The foundation for this success has been laid through our STEM curriculum, community involvement, and the small size of our school. They have been the constant factors through all of this. Add to that, very talented leadership. If tonight's feasibility study shows that a new Beverly Hills Elementary School can be built, I ask you to reverse the motion you passed a year ago to vacate Beverly Hills in June 2020. Keep that space open at Royal Oaks for any downtown school that may need to temporarily relocate there. If you have concerns of possible mechanical failure at Beverly Hills, surely you have the same concerns for any of our downtown aging schools. I ask you to give the Beverly Hills community direction and a plan. We do not want to sit at another school on a fluid 10-year plan. If this study shows a new school is possible, it is in the best interest of everyone to put us on a fixed 1 to 5 year plan and relocate only after funding is approved and only during the period of construction. Thank you.
Nancy Friesfager. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, everyone, I'm on board for moving forward with the rebuilding of Beverly Hills Elementary School as soon as possible. The worst thing we can do is nothing. Let's be proactive and address the situation in a positive manner. Madam Chair, you were smart to take a spin around Beverly Hills Elementary School last June. Laying eyes on the site and the surrounding neighborhood gave you insight into our community's identity and the ripple effect that closing the school would have that data cannot provide. It's a Title I STEM school with great socioeconomic diversity that is exceeding academic benchmarks. Teachers agree students excel in smaller classrooms and with parent volunteers. This can be maintained in the rebuilding of our school. Safety is your main concern for our children, and it's smart to put Beverly Hills Elementary School on the fast track. The route to Royal Oaks Elementary School has flooded at least twice in the last year, requiring closure of Concord Parkway. Allow us to remain at Beverly Hills until the building happens. Build our school sooner than later and use Royal Oaks as the swing school. But have us be there for only 1 year, 2 years at the most. I respectfully ask that your decision to vacate Beverly Hills Elementary School effective June 2020 be reversed. Keeping 400 seats available at Royal Oaks Elementary School is the best way to ensure placement of students in the event of an aging mechanical system failure at R. Brown McAllister or Coltrane Webb as well. Putting Beverly Hills Elementary School on the fast track keeps stability in our neighborhood, downtown city of Concord, and neighboring businesses. Sustainability is key as our county grows. There are numerous benefits and studies supporting that neighborhood schools are a smart investment. One last thought. We have to stop tragic school shootings, and the adults have got to step up in the decision making. In a smaller neighborhood school, troubled individuals can be identified at an earlier age and treated. Resources should be available to intervene and get help for these children. The last 2 shooters at the STEM school in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, had no respect for society. I cannot help but think that they were lost in the shuffle of a larger school. Our county can be in the forefront of the return to smaller neighborhood schools, thus improving school safety. Consider the possibility of having Beverly Hills Elementary School be a model school for the national movement to support smaller neighborhood schools. We can be groundbreaking, no pun intended. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Shannon Burpo.
Good evening. Hello. Hi to the new members. I'm going to be pretty brief tonight because I just whipped something together in the car because my husband gave me a hard time. Basically, I'm a big reader, and this year I read an interesting children's book written by James Rumford called Rain School. It's based on his experiences as a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa. During the rainy season, structures, including schools, are washed away. And then on the first day of school, the children and teachers arrive, and along with the community members, they rebuild their schools. It's a simple mud structure, but once completed, it houses the children as they learn to read, write, and develop the tools needed to be productive members of society. Because of the strength of their community and the value of education, even rebuilding their schoolhouse year after year did not deter them from learning. Obviously, we can't rebuild our schoolhouses every year, but every 60 years seemed like a pretty reasonable request. A big buzz phrase in current educational circles is 21st century learning. I've even heard the phrase used in meetings here. I think it's important to understand the 4 C's at the heart of 21st century learning: collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. I hope you can apply the 4 C's when deciding the future of Beverly Hills. Creative, innovative thinkers know the importance of diversity in education, from the size of the structure to the program offered within it. Maintaining diverse offerings in Cabarrus County will continue to attract and retain both high-quality educators, like we have in the county and at our school, our awesome school with our awesome educators, and diverse learners and their families. For these reasons, I'm again asking you to save our school.
And James Fulton. Hello.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Louder. I'm not going to take up very much of your time either this evening. I've been here several times before to address you. I thank you for forbearance and listening to me and to the rest of us. I just wanted to say tonight that the one thing that's sort of that I've struggled with throughout the discussions about closing Beverly Hills and the sort of determining the fate of our other community schools is really the story behind it. What's the real reason that that the board and the county and so on decided to move forward with those decisions? And we've heard economic arguments. We've heard educational arguments, we've heard sort of political arguments, what's in the art of the possible, what can the county afford, all of that kind of thing. But I think that oftentimes what seems to happen when there's bureaucracy involved is that there's a course of action that gets decided on, and then that course of action sort of gains its own momentum and is that propels it forward, and that it's really difficult for external forces of logic and reason and so on to change it. And the good news is that you folks have an opportunity here to rethink your options and to bring together a community in support of your policies and accomplish something that's really worthwhile, that's good for the county, that's good for the schools, that's good for the neighborhoods, and most of all, that's good for our children. And I really hope that you folks can avail yourselves of that. So thank you very much.
And the next agenda item, I feel like we need a drum roll or something here. We'll welcome Mooresburg Architects for the Beverly Hills feasibility study results.
They get more than 3 minutes, right?
Yes, we're on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Steve. And just as information, the file for this will be put in board docs. I don't know if it'll get in later tonight because we have a long closed session coming up, but tomorrow morning for sure. So you can all download it at your convenience.
Okay. Good evening, board members. Dr. Louder. It's been a while since I've stood up here and spoken to you guys, so it's a pleasure to be back. I'm happy that I didn't have to follow Mr. Burpo. A good job. We're pleased to be here to present the feasibility study, the draft feasibility study for the Beverly Hills Elementary School. With me here tonight is Steve Wallace, who I think most of you know. Our office has been hard at work on this since we were selected earlier this year from among a number of firms. As you know, our charge was to evaluate the existing campus to see if it could accommodate a new 500-student elementary school. So you each have a copy in front of you of the draft report that we've put together, and I'm going to just kind of summarize that here tonight in this PowerPoint presentation, which I'll try to keep brief because I know this is going to be a late enough night for you guys as it is. So we began the study with the evaluation of the existing campus, which I think all of you are familiar with. The campus currently includes a number of separate buildings, as is the case with many of those elementary school campuses of that vintage. The existing buildings total about 50,000 square feet, and many of those are connected with covered walkways. So in our analysis, we looked at a number of factors, but the one that really jumps out that is important for a planning perspective, planning for a new school, is the topography of the site, which again I think most of you are familiar with. The topography of the site can really be broken down into three major areas. There's the upper portion of the site where the existing parking lot and school buildings currently reside, and that has a slope of about 5%. It seems like more when you're out there, but when you look at the topography, it's about a 5% slope. Then you get to the big hill, which has about a 30% slope where the site drops off significantly. That's shown as item F here on the aerial view. That steep slope we really consider unbuildable, and it really presents a lot of challenges even for vehicular circulation. Then the third part of the existing site is the lower area where the fields currently are, and that is essentially a flat area. So once we completed the site assessment, we looked at really three areas of the site which we thought might be candidates for a new building. We're going to talk about two of those tonight. The third area, which was really the very uppermost part of the site that on the boundary line with the water plant, we quickly ruled that out as not being feasible for a variety of reasons. Some of those are documented in the study here. So we looked at the two other sites. We also looked at some of the constraints of the site. We looked at zoning setbacks, which really aren't an issue in developing a new school. It shouldn't present any problem. We looked at vehicular access, which does present some challenges to the site, again, in large part because of that big hill. And we looked at utilities, which are on the graphic that's on the screen now. As you can see from that graphic, there are some utilities that provide some constraints on the lower portion of the site. There's both a sanitary sewer line and a storm drainage line that kind of bisect that part of the site. We also toured the existing school with Mr. Wells and some of his staff. To be clear, we did not assess the existing school in any way for condition or any other factors. That was outside of our scope. The tour was really simply to understand the programs and the curriculum that were being offered there and how those relate to facilities so that we could prepare a program of spaces. That was really our first step in some of the conceptual layouts, is to understand the square footage that was required for a new school. So we developed this program of spaces. That may be difficult for the audience to read, I apologize, but really using the requirements that were included in the RFQ, which required that 50% of the students be represented in K through 2, and then the other 50% in 3 through 5. We use that as well as school planning guidelines for spaces and class sizes, as well as our professional experience. And we've been designing schools for about 30 years now. With all of that, we developed this idealized program. I call it idealized because it really is sort of a theoretical model of the spaces. But that program indicates that a new school accommodating 500 students should be around 59,000 square feet, give or take. So that is kind of what we used for our conceptual layouts. As I mentioned, we focused our attention on two areas of the site. The area that's on the screen there is what we were calling Option A. That option locates a new school essentially in the same area as the existing school. Now, obviously, a new school could be more compact than the existing school, and portions of the new school would be 2 stories to reduce that footprint even more. In this Option A, car parking is located at the upper portion of the site, not unlike it is now. But one thing we've addressed with that new parking layout, obviously in a new school, NCDOT requirements are going to kick in. We've calculated the required queuing length for car drop-off and pickup to be about 838 feet. So we've accounted for that. And then this shows the main entrance to the school being on the upper level, as well as some of the classrooms. As you probably know, only the upper grade classrooms can be on an upper level, so this shows those upper grade classrooms. The next slide then shows the shows the lower level of that school, which really represents the majority of the classrooms, certainly kindergarten through second grade, actually in this case more classrooms than that. The cafeteria, the multipurpose room, and then possibly the media center would be story-and-a-half spaces or two-story spaces. They're typically tall volume spaces, so they could be located on this lower level. And then the bus parking would be on this lower level as well, bus circulation and bus parking. The bus parking and the car parking could be connected. That gives the fire truck access around the school. Then that could be controlled with a gate. The play areas would remain on the lowest part of the site, although we have included the construction of a new ramp and stair that would make that big hill a little bit easier to navigate. We've sort of summarized that in some advantages and some challenges. I won't read all of these here, but a few advantages of building here. We're essentially using the same location as the existing building, and we're able to take advantage of that lesser of a slope on the upper part of the site with the building layout and the two-story floor plan. There's some site advantages as well. The vehicular circulation works pretty well here. We're able to split the cars and the buses. We're able to allow enough queuing for the cars and really not add any curb cuts beyond what is already there. There are a few challenges to this site as well, or this option as well. You know, the arrangement of having the main offices on the upper level away from the majority of the spaces is a bit of a compromise. It's certainly not unheard of, but I wouldn't call it ideal in terms of a floor plan. And then you'll see in this option, as well as in the second option, there's really not any way to get the play areas on the same level as the school. There's just not enough space. You know, ideally you would have the school and all the parking and all the play areas essentially on the same level, but with that big hill bisecting the site, we're not able to do that. So that presents a challenge as well. The second option that we looked at, which we've called option B, locates the school on the lowest part of the site, down where the play fields are currently located. Again, we've used a compact floor plan, and again, it's a two-story plan to try to keep it as compact as possible since we have limited site area. So you can see here that some of the advantages of this option really are more building related. The floor plan works a little bit better than option B does. You can see the majority of the spaces are on the main level or the ground level. We do still have a two-story portion of some of those upper level classrooms. The site layout, the vehicular circulation works better than the existing situation, but probably not as well as option A. We are able to separate cars and buses as school planning typically likes to do. But again, because of that big hill, we only have one curb cut or one access point coming off of Palisades Drive there, which is a little bit of a challenge. And then in this option, we kind of flip the play field area. Those then would go on the upper level where the existing school is. Again, we need the ramps and the stairs to navigate that big hill. So those are reflected in this option as well. Some of the advantages of this option I've really kind of already mentioned. The efficient floor plan layout. Many of the program spaces end up on the same level here, which works really well. There's less grading of the site here because that portion of the site is essentially flat. We do have the separate areas for buses and cars, as I mentioned, as well as the queuing link that we need for NCDOT. Some of the challenges here, the orientation of the building is not ideal. You know, we always typically look for that east-west axis orientation to sort of maximize solar and daylighting, and that's just really impossible to do on this lower level. Some of the challenges with site, really, there are a number of bullet points here, but they really all come down to the same thing, and that's that single access point. Because of that emergency access, if there were ever an accident there, something closed that site, then you have some real challenges getting buses in and out and getting students in and out. So we see that as a challenge that would compromise this option a little bit. Those are the two options that we studied. We looked at the cost of each option, and I'm going to preface all this by telling you what you already know. In this economy, it is extremely difficult to predict the cost of school construction. The graphic that you see there is actually historical cost that comes from school planning for schools over the last 10 years. So you can see with that historical data, trying to look 2 years down the road and figure out where the next dot is going to end up is a daunting task. We enlisted the help of a cost consultant. It's a consultant that we use on a regular basis, and all they do is cost estimating. This consultant that we used is particularly good at estimating cost based on limited drawings and just sort of conceptual ideas. The drawings that they use to do the cost estimate are the drawings that you have in the study, which obviously are very conceptual, very limited, not even schematic level drawings. So all that is to say that the costs being presented here tonight are, sort of our best guess at this point. There are some detailed estimates that are included in the full report. I'll just sort of summarize those cost estimates here. Based on those detailed estimates, we would anticipate the construction cost of option A to be somewhere around $16 million. I'll qualify that by saying that is construction only. It includes construction and demolition. Does not include any of the what we call soft costs, which would be design fees, permitting fees, surveys, testing, furniture and equipment, things like that. Those would all be over and above this amount. So that roughly $16 million totals $274 a square foot. As you know, in our world, we often look at those dollars per square foot numbers. The $274 per square foot is significantly higher than the average cost of an elementary school last year. And it's higher for a few reasons, one of which this is a smaller school. Typically, when you build smaller, the dollars per square foot are more because there are certain fixed costs that you have, whether the school is for 500 students or 1,000 students. So that's part of it. The other part of it is this does include the demolition of the existing building. We factored that into our cost estimates. That equates to about $7.50 of new building costs. So that drives the number up a little bit. And then the third item, which is probably the biggest item, it does include some escalation. We have assumed that the project bids in 2020 or about a year from now. I know that's arbitrary and probably not realistic, but we have to sort of pick a date. And to be perfectly honest, it's nearly impossible to have reliable escalation much beyond that right now. As you know, construction costs have climbed pretty steadily over the last 5 years, and they're going to continue to climb. A lot of that is based on the discussion you hear every day about tariffs and steel tariffs and the threat of tariffs and how that might drive material costs up. But there's also a labor shortage that we're seeing, not just in school construction, but in all of construction. I think compounding that and making cost estimators nervous when they try to escalate costs, there is a very real possibility that the state will release a couple of $2 billion for public school construction over the next little bit of time. And if that happens, we've been told by contractors that you can expect school costs to skyrocket significantly. So again, all that is to say that we've done our best at trying to estimate escalation, but it truly is a guess at this point. Option B has very similar construction costs, maybe slightly higher. In going back and analyzing the detail, I think the slight increase in cost of option B really can be attributed to the relocation of those utilities that you may recall were in one of the earlier slides. We have to reroute some sewer lines, sanitary sewer lines and storm drain lines. There are also some retaining walls in option B, even though it's a flat site. There is enough, we get into that hillside enough, both the big hill and then the hill kind of at the back of the site, to require some retaining walls, and those are costly as well. So this one comes in around $16.5 million, or really just under $280 a square foot. So again, just to reiterate, we see these really more as order of magnitude numbers than actual budget numbers. We believe to get a firmer budget, more detailed drawings would be required, as well as more information about the schedule. When would this really start construction? The other thing that I'll just point out as a qualifier is there really have been no subsurface investigation on either option A or option B. So as you guys have experienced in school construction, we don't know anything about whether there's rock or unsuitable soil or buried tanks or anything else on either of those sites. So that would be something else that would have to be, that would warrant more exploration. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good overview of the report. As I mentioned there, all those detailed estimates are in there. I'm certain as you guys review it, you may have additional questions for us. We still have labeled the report draft at this point until we get feedback from the board, but be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Board members, any initial comments? This is a lot to absorb. Mr. Harrison? Okay. I'll say one thing that I would want to know is from staff, what's the standard amount we could presume for technology, furniture, and fixtures, like to get a total project cost, even though it's only, this is 2020 and like you said, who knows what will happen, but I'd like to know what that total picture is, approximately. So, Mr. Harrison, a comment?
Yeah, just some clarification questions, and thank you for the thorough and extensive work you've done for us. We appreciate your professionalism. An earlier speaker mentioned flooding on the property side. I forget the context, but apparently the site has water runoff issues. Have you calculated or factored any of what's obvious?
The extent of our assessment was to determine whether or not it is in a floodplain, which it is not. I don't know the details of the flooding. Obviously, I suspect some of it has to do with the storm drain, the existing storm drain that is at the bottom of that site, which we would anticipate replacing that entire storm drain line across the site.
So option B is in the lower?
Option B is in the lower part, which replaces both the sanitary sewer line and the storm sewer line. But again, you know, additional study would have to be done on that site, not just for subsurface, but for any sort of water runoff. We've indicated detention ponds on both of the sites, but those are really just at this point kind of placeholders. We know there would need to be detention, but determining how large that detention was outside the scope of this.
So that's one known unknown at the moment, but it would have to be factored in.
Exactly, sure.
And that's not
it would require
in much
further
detail
study.
addressed here, is it?
Correct. It would require further study.
Okay. I've got another question or two, but if someone wants to jump in, please. Hazardous material abatement is kind of, to me, the elephant in the room here. Do you have, y'all have got a million years of experience doing what you do. I respect that a great deal. Do you, you don't know what is under there until you get under there, I guess. But that's another known unknown that seems to be itemized here but can't be quantified.
Yeah,
What again would be the result of finding whatever condition the soil is
we had
for
available
the 60
to us,
years that the school has been there?
We had available to us during this study any reports that had been done previously on the school, and all of that was factored. All that is currently known was factored into the cost estimate and the demolition cost. Now, that is not to say there aren't some unknowns. That's why I mentioned, often in these old campuses you might find buried tanks or something that that has not shown up. A phase 1 environmental assessment would be required, and then that would tell you whether you needed a phase 2 or not. I think those are things that, that's additional investigation that you would want to do. But any known information that was provided us by the school system was factored in.
As far as what is known as of today?
Correct.
Okay, thank you all again. Appreciate it.
Mr. Walter?
Two questions. The demolition, does that include asbestos or anything like that, or is it? That would be additional.
Yeah, again, if it was known at the time of the study, if it was part of the information was given to us by the school system, it was included.
Okay, and then one other thing I didn't quite understand, you said the admin on option A is on the second floor. Why is that again? Because it looks like you've
So,
got,
so, yeah, it's a little bit confusing because you actually enter option A on the second floor. Well, car parking, the main entrance would be on the second floor, and then the bulk of the school would be on the lower level on the first floor, which would be entered by the bus lot. So that's the reason that it's on what we would term the second floor.
this is a bit confusing. So
It is.
if someone's,
I understand.
if you're dropping off a younger child, they still have to transition a floor of stairs?
If you're correct.
And
Yes.
that's okay, or I don't,
I mean, it's okay as far as the building code is concerned. Whether it's okay as far as the school system is concerned is.
I mean,
is
you
your
just
call.
said that the younger grades have to be on the lower floor. And
The classrooms do have to be located on the lower floor, but that's not to say that kindergarten and second grade students can't go to the upper levels. That happens all the time. I mean, we've done schools where the media center, for example, is on the second floor. Those students can go to that level, but their classroom has to be on the lower level.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Okay, all right. On option, the first option, that was putting it on the existing site. So then your second option is putting it on that lower site. So one of the things would be, then you would be able to keep the children on the existing site if you used option B. In other words, if you were using option B, then you could keep them on that existing site while you're building the school. Is that correct?
We didn't look at it that way because the information that we had from the board was the school would be vacated in June of 2020. But I mean, it is located away from that existing building site down on what is now the play field. So conceivably that could happen. There would be obviously some
I
disruptions.
mean, is that possible? Well, let me ask you that way. If you had used option B, then could the children remain in the building while you're, if it was chosen, option B? Could you do that, or is that possible, or would you have to move the children?
Again, we didn't study it that way, but just looking at it here tonight on the spot, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be possible. Now, you would lose those playing fields at the start of new construction, so you'd either have to do without playing fields during the duration of the construction, or you'd have to try to find another spot for them. So other than that, I think it would be possible, yes.
That's all playgrounds? There wouldn't be any playgrounds available at all, or?
Currently, that's all the playgrounds that they have down that lower level.
So but that was one of the questions. And the other thing was, all right, with that, and you said that, you did take now with it looks like you used the current numbers of students in the number of students that.
We didn't use the current number of students. We used a population of 500, which is what the RFQ required.
No, I'm talking about it looks like you used the adjusted number of, well, maybe not. It looked like with the students that the state has required.
Oh, you're talking about classroom size.
Classroom size. It looked like, well, you can have more students in the upper grades, but it looked like you kind of used the.
We used the revised classroom size that is what DPI is currently telling kids.
Okay,
So it's a 1 to 18 ratio funding for teachers, but they allow you to go 3 over that in kindergarten through third, I believe it is, yeah. So we use the 21.
Okay.
Would be the maximum classroom size of those lower grades.
Because on the upper grades, you can go with more students, and it looked like you were still using the lower level on the higher students. Isn't that correct?
We used a different ratio on the upper grades, I believe, didn't we? Yeah. We used the DPI guidelines.
Okay,
I guess
on
the best way
that
to
one.
put it.
And with that, with the other. Now, the other question I had, and staff probably can get us that before the next meeting. I'm curious on what guidelines our staff use for the numbers that they have, because I know our staff had a number of like 21 million. And so I'm curious where they got their numbers from and what they were using. They may have been using a different I think they were using a building of 400 students, and I'm wondering where their numbers come from. So if we can get where,
I'll speak to that. So there were several things in there. For example, like abatement, that our staff tried to estimate that these guys didn't for the reasons that they said they didn't. So we'll send you that. We'll send you that
yeah, if you
estimate.
can send where, what, because I know it's like $7 million difference, and I'd really like to compare what, because it was 21 million, and now I'm looking at 16 million.
It's like
So,
5. So
well,
like 5 different.
well, it was 21 million, we're looking at 16 million. So what the difference is.
And I don't know anything about the staff number, but again, to clarify, our number is construction only. There's no soft costs in that number.
Okay, because you said there wasn't any with that, but I know theirs was 400 seats, and you're looking at 500 seats, so you're looking at more seats. And I know you said yours didn't have demolition, I mean, the
Yeah, correct.
I can't get it out. The other stuff, but I'd like to kind of compare apples to apples, so what we're looking at with that. So we know where the difference is, and maybe square footage, because you've got, I don't know how much their square footage is, you're looking at almost 60,000 or 600, but you got 58,928.
Right.
See what theirs was. Okay, that's all I've got right now.
Okay, I have a question before I forget. Will the fire marshal allow that lower level with only one entrance? That would seem to be like a pretty big safety issue, because at schools, we always have to have the perimeter
Yeah, we
driveway.
don't have the perimeter, we don't have the room to go all the way around the school there, but you'll see that sort of T turnaround. That, as long as they can turn the fire truck around and then have a maximum 200-foot hose pull, then typically they're okay with it. Now, can I guarantee that the City of Concord Fire Marshal will be okay with it? No, but based on our experience with them, we think that will work.
Is there any room on that lower level to pull another driveway just out to the side for emergency purposes?
I think we'd have to look at that with them, see if they would allow that, because the problem is you're coming down the hill,
Yeah.
so it'd have to be emergency only gated. We'd have to talk to them about that.
Yeah. That's always struck me about the need for those entrance egress roads and the perimeter driveways and all that, and this doesn't have 2 points that has stuck in my mind over construction, so.
Yeah, as we identified, that is one of the challenges of that site is access to it.
So,
Now, you weren't using, with this, you did not use you didn't keep any of the existing buildings at all on
We did not.
any of them?
We did
Okay,
not.
on any of yours?
Did you evaluate that?
We did not evaluate any of the existing building, no.
Mrs. Grimsley?
Carolyn, turn them
Oh,
Thank you. Just a quick question. Do you know what the standard per square foot right now for just building cost is? Or that may be a question for Tim of our newest elementary school? $235?
Can you restate the question and answer then?
Just what the building cost per square foot is right now, just the standard, what we're seeing.
And what was your answer?
$235 per square foot.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But a bigger school.
Yeah, that's where you save on the core spaces, because you need the same core spaces.
That's construction also.
Ms. Blackwell, any questions? No. That's a lot to look at. Yeah, a lot of information here. Mr. Harrison, anything else?
Just, I know we asked you to do this study, and thank you very, very, very much again. But in theory, if the means were available, bids would go out. Would this study, to this extent, at least be the basis for other companies that would pick up the ball and run with it, so to speak? I guess you've given a general enough study here that other architectural and construction firms could use as a basis for their next steps, in theory, if that were to happen, but...
It would be a starting point.
Right.
I mean, as I've mentioned several times, there would need to be much additional study and development of one or both of those options based on additional information that would have to come from you as the owner, including things like schedule and you know, the viability of having one entrance and things like that.
As well as the demolition being the last phase as opposed to the first phase.
Certainly that would require a phasing study of its own if you're going to, I think what you're saying is try to remain, try to keep that school, the existing school occupied while new construction. That takes a phasing study of its own. But, so yeah, but again, it would be a starting point.
But this data or this perspective is transferable
Sure.
to other.
You own it.
And thank you very much.
Ms.
It's
Black?
ours now.
What is the cost per seat?
I don't know. We didn't calculate it that way.
Okay.
I can calculate it, but it's roughly $16 million, right? Ask Steve a question when he comes.
Okay, so this says drafts. What do you need before it's final?
For you guys to approve it.
So we're approving it tonight, or are we approving it later, or what do we do?
I think there's a lot to look at personally.
So to answer your question, Ms. Blackwell, I did $16 million, which is sort of the rough construction only cost, divided by 500, it's $32,000 per seat.
Okay.
So yeah, we just need board approval. We'll take draft off, or if you have any comments after you've taken the time to go through it and review it, then we'll certainly reflect those comments in the final study and issue that as a final.
Mr. Shoemaker, any questions?
One, I just want to reiterate, this is only for building costs, and you basically listed in 5.1 and 5.2 all the items that were not included in your study, including design fees, regulatory fees, construction testing, surveys, subsurface investigation, furniture and equipment, technology, hazardous materials abatement, and removal of the modular classrooms.
Correct. And some of those, you know, would be impossible to predict at this point. Some of them would come from you, like technology and furniture and equipment. You know, certainly there's some that we could take guesses at, but we felt it was more accurate and safer at this point just to leave those, again, soft costs out and deal with just the construction numbers.
And you said on the programming that you got from DPI, this is based on the final portion of the law, which doesn't come available, or doesn't come due to us until 2021, I believe.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. On the 838 feet for car traffic, you had both of that amount of queuing in both scenarios, so upstairs and downstairs, but the upper level versus the lower level?
We did, yeah, that was one of the sort of guiding factors in laying out those parking areas.
And in option A, it does include an upper level play space, it looks like, is that correct? I saw a green box over to the
You're correct.
right.
There is a kindergarten, first grade play area right outside of that kindergarten, first grade wing, which is, I think, a big advantage of that option. We were able to get that up on that upper level, so that's a good catch there. Thank you.
So I actually like the lower option better, but it concerns me about the driving area. Where's the queuing on that? Is it at the bottom, go to the right and go around the parking lot?
Yeah, it goes out, you're actually looping through the parking lot to get the queuing.
Okay, because I'm like, that didn't seem like that was enough. Because we have to be able to get buses in and out, emergency vehicles in and out, all while parents are queuing. So.
Correct.
In addressing Ms. Hortonball's question.
Go back to that slide.
Visualize what you're saying. So you can do that. Sorry, I'm a visual learner.
Steve, you want to try to explain the queuing there? So, I mean, you can see the loop that sort of goes around the parking lot to the right-hand side in the plan. So that would be what would be used for part of the queuing, trying to leave that main line, that main road open back to the, back to the bus lot. So, traffic, even though we only have one entrance, typically what we try to do is split that traffic just as quickly as we can, get cars going one way, buses going the other way. So cars would go to the right, begin that queuing process, buses would go straight on through. Does not eliminate the problem that if you have an accident at that curb cut onto Palisades Drive, you have a problem because there's no other way in or out. I think that's what Ms. Furtenball was saying. Is there another way to get another curb cut? Possibly. That requires a lot of conversations with Concord DOT and NCDOT and things like that, which we did not have under the scope of this study.
And you may have already said it, but option B would be completely two-story, and option A would be partially one-story and two-story?
They're both partial 2 stories. I mean, typically the multi-purpose room and the cafeteria, those are taller volume spaces, so we typically don't stack things on top of those. You certainly can, but in this case we did not. So in both cases, the only second floor spaces are really the upper grade classrooms, 4th and 5th grade. I think was it third as well. So that's the only stacking part.
Mr. Berg, what would be the impact if the kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade actually couldn't exceed, or actually they were free higher? Because from what I understand from Dr. Lowry is that classrooms are allowed to exceed on a case-by-case basis 3. So to build them all standard at 21 versus 18, that actually introduces a 12 students worth of variability into your study. What would that do to these?
I think you would end up adding, as you said, 12 students per grade level. So you'd end up adding, a classroom and a half or 2 classrooms. In the whole scheme of things, you're talking about 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. So certainly it would add square footage. Again, the thing I would caution about, this is a theoretical program.
Absolutely.
We could design the school and it be 57,000 square feet, or it may end up being 61,000 square feet. So there's still going to be a range there. It would increase the square footage. There's no question about that. Okay. Would it be significant? It's hard to say at this point.
Yeah, because we are talking order of magnitude anyway.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
These
are all very conceptual level documents.
So if we were to put inflation costs on there, we would probably have to kind of inflate a little bit just to make sure that we were.
Well, we have put inflation costs on there for a year. That is included in those detailed cost estimates. You'll see a note in the cost estimator that he's reflected those in the unit prices. Now, if it goes beyond that, those are not accounted for. Correct.
Approximately how much is that inflation?
I'd have to go back to the cost estimator to see what number they use.
235?
It's more than that for construction right now. I mean,
because this takes
we were seeing 3% a quarter last year.
So this takes us out to 2020 as the start date.
As the bid date.
The bid date.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And again, that's sort of an arbitrary date. I don't expect it to start then, but we had to pick a date for the cost estimator. So.
Did you look at all of the alternative in the RFQ of 400 students and administrative space?
We looked at it. We looked at it at a very high level and pretty quickly determined that if you were going to have something other than the school on that site, the site's just too small to begin supporting it because, for example, if you were to put some office space there, then that requires its own parking and its own circulation in and out that you would want to keep completely separate from the school circulation. As you can see from the diagrams there's just not enough room on the site to support
It's almost
that.
like it's 2 lots, 2 sections of land.
It is because of that big hill, correct.
Yeah. Okay, board members, other questions tonight? Okay.
If we come up with some, can we just send it to Barry since he's the chairman of that committee, if we come up with something?
Yeah, I would suggest,
Send it
yeah,
to
are you
Barry.
okay with gathering? If there's questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, just send them to me. I will compile them. It'd be better for me to compile a list, so why don't we work on a date, say Thursday of this week, and then I can send them off to Mr. Berg and
That might be too soon for all of this.
maybe it's too soon. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, we have recognition things Tuesday and Thursday this week.
We got
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm out of town on Friday, so
Yeah.
with
Why don't
NCSBA,
we
so.
say maybe next, because this week's pretty busy.
Yeah,
for
and
all
when,
of us.
our next,
Madam Chair, you work with the board on that, and I'll be quiet.
our next meeting, work session is not till the 3rd. Well, it's actually pretty early in June. What if we say by the end, well, that goes into Memorial Day though. Are you guys available to answer questions Memorial Day week?
Sure.
Okay, so if we get
We're working on it.
any questions to Barry by the 23rd, Thursday the 23rd, and then he can hopefully get them together, the sooner the better, obviously. Or maybe we should say the 22nd, just to give Barry time. Are you in town that week, sir?
I am in town, and I'm putting it on my calendar.
Okay, let's say the 22nd. Before you go to sleep on the night of the 22nd, send Mr. Shoemaker your questions, comments, things you want to know about. And then that would give Mooresburg some time to get the information together, and that we would be able to have it for our meeting on June 3rd, our work session. Does that sound good? Okay, so by Wednesday, the 22nd evening. And then, in the meantime, I actually think it's on the 21st, we have our regular, county commissioners annual, go talk about budget. And that's really not for capital projects so much as it is the operating continuation budget. But then we need to be thinking about when we put the capital plan on the agenda, and do we rearrange anything that's already on the capital plan? The middle school cannot, we need that room. We cannot abandon the middle school because we're out of even mobile unit room right now. But see what other scenarios are possible. So, okay? So more to come, but the 22nd is our first due date. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We knew you would deliver.
So is this presentation going to be on board docs? This presentation will be on board docs?
Yes, by tomorrow morning, Minnie will put it out there.
Okay.
She'll have to get the jump drive from Dane.
And the draft, where will that be?
This is there a separate file for this? Did Todd go out? I didn't see where he went. Okay.
Yeah, it will be complete.
Oh, both things are on that?
Both things will be on board?
Okay, are on the jump drive, okay. Because just for the audience, this has some verbiage in there that
It
would
should
help
be complete.
explain-
That's the way I
Yeah,
explained it to
some
him,
of the
to make sure
slides.
all the information was in the jump drive. And
Yeah.
so that should be basically 2 files.
Yeah, okay. And if it's not, we'll inquire for it. So, okay. Do y'all want to stay for the rest of the meeting?
Break.
What's it?
Take a break or everyone go?
I think we can.
3 minutes?
I think we can get through most of this fairly quickly because a lot of it was discussed at the work session. You guys okay with keep moving? Okay. So next we have agenda item, not option, agenda item 9.01 for the approval of the May 6, 2019 consent agenda. Mr. Harrison made the motion.
Second.
Mr. Walter made the second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes 7-0. The value of the work session and getting things on consent. The first item on the action agenda, item 10.01, regarding school nutrition program breakfast and lunch price increases. Hello, Ms. Almond? Board members, do you have any questions regarding this?
I do have one, and Kelly may have, or you may can answer it. I noticed on our weekly report, I was looking at the budget amendment for, it was, our report was the financial report, and it was under the budget, and it was saying nutrition budget line, and it was saying the budget balance was $1.6 million left in the budget. Is that correct, as of the end of April?
Correct. Right. We still have May and June still to process, and we still have a lot of closing entries that has to be done. So that's the current balance in the budget.
But we'll spend that much between now and then, 1.6 million, you think?
Oh, yeah. The budget is designed to offset the expenses.
Well, I know that. That's what I've done all my life with budget stuff, so I know how that works.
So take
didn't
the amount of
look-
expenses that's on that and divide it by 10 or 9, right? So we're already that
Well,
far
that
into
was the end of April,
And then
and-
multiply it out, and you should get your number.
Yeah, because it said it had 80-something percent,
yeah.
but yeah, I know that. But we're almost through the year end. I mean, you know,
We're
it's,
still feeding kids. We're still feeding the babies,
Yeah.
aren't we?
how much do you usually do in a month's time? I mean, here we are at the end of May almost.
So take that number, take that expenditure number, divide it out by the number of months that we've already consumed. So 10,
Yeah.
but not really 10 because we don't operate in July. You got to divide those expenses out, and then that's your number. So that'll be your number for May, and then you'll have a partial number in June of that because you don't operate completely in June, but you have a lot of adjusting entries that goes in there, like depreciation and accruals and things like that go in there. But yes, we last year we lost money. You're aware of that. So we net loss, and the budget was built so that we wouldn't lose
How
money.
much did we lose last year?
So wasn't prepared to answer that level of question today, but I can tell you it was somewhere around $500,000.
Okay.
So
Well, I mean, I saw that on there, and I was just thinking, hey, we're near the end of the year. I didn't think we would spend that much, but you're saying we will by the end of.
So we're
Okay.
up in the 80-some% of expenditures.
Yeah, we were 80. I
right?
had it pulled up. It was
So if
80,
you're-
86, 87%.
So if you're 9/10 of your school year passed, you should be 90%, right? If we're at 89, that means we're pretty much in line.
87.
Yeah,
And that
by the
also-
time you get your
7.5%?
Yeah, so by the time you get your depreciation accrued and your accruals and everything else that goes in and clearing out all your purchase orders and your inventory, you're pretty dang close.
So, well, yeah, but we'll be broken even, you're saying
Well,
we
we hope
definitely.
so. I hope I'm not gonna lose any money this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mrs. Carpenter, I will tell you, I have in the past, many months ago, calculated off of that sheet and like, doggone it, Kelly's right every time.
Well, I mean, but it was, I mean, I saw that and I was
Well, if
thinking,
not,
well,
I'm
gee, we're right
raising the red
close.
flag.
Yes.
Well, yeah, well, but looking at that, and that's what I was questioning, I'm saying that it was 163607.75, what it was showing it was still in there, and that's why I was questioning that. Okay, that was my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Walter?
How many free and reduced students do we have?
How many by the numbers?
Yes.
Well, it is roughly, if you don't count the CEP schools, roughly about 50%.
50% on free and reduced. And
I can get you the exact numbers tomorrow.
That's okay. The number that you had sent earlier about the number of kids that are over the $8, are they getting, what are they, we're giving them an alternate lunch? Is that what we're doing, or what do we do?
Yes, there are some students that once they apply, they've actually already accrued some charges. So mostly, well, I shouldn't say mostly because that's not an exact number, but that number that I sent you included not only the free students who had accrued a balance before they applied and were approved, also included reduced students who either had a prior balance or are continuing to accrue as time goes on, and full pay students who are accruing a balance. That's right.
So some of them are not on giving alternate lunch, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't answer that part. Yes, the free students, sorry, the full pay students receive the alternate meal.
Which is what?
It is usually the exact same vegetables and fruits, and of course a milk, and then there's usually a sandwich.
So it's better than what the news has been recently at some other districts about peanut butter sandwiches or something.
Yes, and we don't do peanut butter anyway, so yes.
That's good.
Yes.
And then my other question had to do with, last time we did not raise prices, had something to do with having a balance that was exceeding something. Can you explain why we're not doing that this time?
Mainly, I would say because of the loss last year, because that contributed to all of that. And so in the best interest of continuing, and do you remember the slide that I had that showed the increase in costs over the past several years versus
Right.
the increase, or
Right.
the less of an increase of reimbursements and cash sales? So it's mainly to make sure that we are still breaking even, because our goal is nonprofit.
Right, and you're saying without the
So we want-
increase, we're breaking even right now, though?
Yes,
We're not losing money this year, is what you're saying?
exactly.
And just as a summary, Mr. Walter, I want to interject that the increase is 5 cents for breakfast.
Correct.
And 10 cents for lunch.
Correct.
So, and we did not, she did not recommend the higher amount that we could have gone to.
Right, but we've been
correct.
out of, at least since I've been on the board, we've increased at least 10 cents every year but one.
Yes.
Last year.
So 2 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah, I would just say what Ms. Allman, I think, did a great job explaining last week was that 10 cents is, in essence, inflation. And we have not kept up with inflation over this amount of time. And so anytime that you do not raise it 10 cents, I mean, I'm overgeneralizing a little bit, but, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a mistake to not increase with inflation. And I think a couple of her slides had great examples of saying, here's how much it costs to prepare a meal, and here's how much we're charging. And when there's a loss there, it is very difficult to expect them not to come out even. And that's exactly what happened last year when we did not make that decision.
Okay, and I'm seeing that we've got 725 kids that are having trouble paying lunches, and that'll go up if we increase the prices, and if we're not losing money this year.
So it's not necessarily
keep it another name.
It's not necessarily students that have had problems with that. There's all kinds of stories along with that the child nutrition staff manages. So it's not really that simple, but it's something that they're always dealing with and always will deal with. But it's not going to change the fact that there's always inflation, right? And again, I thought she did a great job last week explaining that you have to keep up with that if you expect them to come out even. And when we didn't do that the year before, we didn't. And so it certainly would be our recommendation that we increase to keep up with inflation to come out even.
I just have a question too. I don't know if you, and I've spoken to some people out in the community who are interested in paying those costs for schools where they have a negative balance, and for the kids that are not able to pay so that they can have a regular lunch. Is that something that we have looked into for these nonprofits that want to pay for these kids that can't pay?
Yeah, I would just, before anybody else answers, I just want to suggest that if they've accumulated in a nonprofit or someone would generously pay off their bill, we don't want to encourage future accumulation. That's not teaching responsibility of the child or the parents. So I think there would have to be a definite program in place to make sure that it just, kind of a one-time fix.
Yeah, I think that this was a program that some of these folks in the community were working on starting.
Okay.
For specifically Cabarrus County. I just didn't know what the guidelines were for that and who I could get them in touch with.
Well, and first and foremost, one of the best things that we can do is if there are families who are in need, that we can get them connected and apply for free or reduced price meals. That would be I think our first line of defense to be able to, because we want to feed all of the children, definitely. And that would remove that barrier, and then maybe with whatever the board would like to do, explore that further.
Can I just say, please,
Absolutely.
if anybody wants to give us money, call me. I'll make sure that we get it to the right place. Anybody, I'll take care of it, okay?
We'll take anything.
Absolutely.
Anytime. I can tell you that right off the bat.
Gladly, yes.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Ms. Allman, in one of your slides last week, you showed us about the paid lunch equity requirement.
Yes.
And you were talking in there about, the federal paid lunch requirement is $3.
Yes.
And then you go, our paid lunch was a weighted average of $2.80, and then you
Correct.
went, the required price increase for us to get to the $3 was 20 cents.
Correct.
However, we were able to go with the minimum, which is 10 cent price increase. Is that a federal mandate to us?
Yes, that is correct. You are allowed to cap it. If you are over 10 cents away from that federal weighted average price, you are allowed to cap your increase at 10 cents per year. You just carry it over to the next year. You can increase it however much you like, but you do not have to increase more than 10 cents beyond.
So we don't really have an option of not doing anything.
That's correct.
That's what I really want to know. So there's a federal requirement, and if we don't increase it by 10 cents, then is there some kind of potential penalty that the district would face by not keeping up with the federal requirement?
There is, yes, sir. It is part of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, so it's part of that federal law that is the umbrella law that governs child nutrition. So yes, there is definitely a financial and a citing on an audit as well.
But again, 2 years ago, they told us something different. If you hold a balance of some, cash balance of so much, you don't have to do that.
We don't hold that balance anymore.
You don't hold the balance. How much of a balance
Right.
do you have to keep to have that happen?
3 months. You have to exceed 3 months.
So we don't have
operating
3 months on
balance.
hand?
No, sir, we do not. When we took a loss last year, we are under the 3 months now. And so that is why we jointly have recommended that we increase our price along with the federal guidelines requirement so that we
That'll get you the 3 months.
so that we can aspire for that. Not sure that we'll get it even this year because you've got salary increases, you've got hospitalization increases, you've got retirement increases, you've got cost of food increases. The salary increases for the lower level, the lower paid staff are usually a higher percentage because there's a maximum $500 listed in the budget potentially that they'll have to get. So on a low salary, that could be 3 or more %. So if we're not increasing our prices, but our benefits and our cost will exceed the revenues, you're going to continue to put us in a loss situation, and you're going to eat away at your fund balance, and you're not going to be able to operate in a economically reasonable level.
Well, we're breaking even this year is what you said.
Pardon?
We're breaking even this year is what you said.
As far as I can tell so far. Yeah.
So why are we breaking even this year?
Well, next year we're going to have cost increased, and if we don't increase the revenue, there's no way to break even. If your cost increase, your revenue has to increase. Otherwise, you're going to dip into your savings, which is what we did last year, which therefore made us below the required eligibility option so that we didn't have to increase our prices.
Okay, so you're saying we don't have the 3 months, therefore we're required to make the increase?
Yes, I am.
And before you leave, Ms. Klutz, I believe because this is an enterprise fund, if school nutrition doesn't have the money to operate and finish the year, it comes from some other source within the district. We still have to pay the bills.
Sure, and I've always worked really hard to ensure that that doesn't happen for this district.
So, okay, I will take a motion to approve the 5-cent lunch or breakfast increase and 10-cent lunch price increase.
Moved.
Mr. Harris made the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Shoemaker made the second. All in favor, say aye.
Reluctantly.
I'm with you. Reluctantly, it looks like we're over a
Any
barrel
opposed? Okay. So 7-0, and I think that is a smart move, both for the fiscal soundness of the program and to abide by law.
Can I just make one comment? I just want to say, remember that Ms. Allman just stepped in the middle of the school year this year and has made numerous kind of decisions to good financial decisions. And so we appreciate what she's done in that situation. And certainly Ms. Klutz and she have worked together to put us in a good situation. So just want to say what a great job you guys have done and that we appreciate it.
Okay, board members, next item 10.02, the 2020 Cabarrus County Schools, Rowan Cabarrus Community College, Early College Career Promise Memorandum of Agreement. Mr. Allred.
Hey there. I'll take any more questions if you have them about the MOA.
Should highlight the changes again, if there were any?
There were no substantive changes whatsoever.
Okay, so
We
we're
changed the order, made it more legible.
So we're essentially just renewing again?
Yes.
I move approval for that.
Mr. Walter made the motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Carpenter made the second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Short night.
I just want to-
Relatively
That's
speaking.
the way I like it.
Ben, can you give us an update on how many kids take advantage of the early career college promise?
I was not prepared to answer that question.
You don't have to do it tonight.
Yeah, we can send it, we'll send it to them.
I can send it to you. I have that data.
Yeah. And the next item, 10.03, Mr. Allred also has regarding academic fees, and he provided the crosswalk to show us the changes.
And the only
Nice.
change I made was the recommendation you made about advanced placement exam. So I'll put that note in there, and I'll send the updated copy to Mindy so she can reflect that in board docs, just to show that it shows as 0, but that's due to a state grant. So I added a note for that.
And moving forward, I'd like to see the academics fees separated from these other fees.
Just to have two kind of sections in the chart.
Yes, 2 sections.
So the academic versus the optional things such as yearbook. I'm not sure how much else there is optional, but.
I can do that.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion, we approve with the dichotomy that Mr. Walter asked for of required versus, or academic versus optional.
Mr. Shoemaker made the motion. Was that Mr. Harrison made the second? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anything opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. And 10.04, we have Dr. Hill and Ms. Sandor regarding the academically and intellectually gifted plan.
Good evening, Dr. Louder, Ms. Furtenbaugh, members of the board. We last week had the opportunity to present the Cabarrus County Schools 3-year AIG plan. We have not received any questions at this point. If there are none, we would ask for your approval.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve it.
I'll second it.
Mr. Walter made the motion. It's like I get 2 on the left or 2 on the right.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Carpenter made the second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And then we have 10.05. Yeah, 3 hours wait for 10.05, the Title I plan. Ms. Slago and Dr. Hill.
Yes, thank you again. Last week, we did have the pleasure of sharing the Title I plan with you. Last Friday, we did send a few adjustments to you regarding R. Brown McAllister Elementary School and Bethel Elementary School, and just want to entertain any questions that you may have.
All right, we did have an adjustment because I noticed, and I just wonder which way it went. Because, you know, we talked about the transitional camp and the other one, and I noticed that those figures changed. Why?
Well, we're always open for input, so you shared that question. We went back and reworked some numbers, and because we'll be serving Concord Middle School, we've decided to serve middle school students targeted instead of all rising middle school students going to Concord Middle School. So we were able to reduce that cost and increase support to Wolf Meadow Elementary School.
Okay, because I noticed, because you made a good point. I mean, hey, you told me you were going to serve all those middle school, and then I looked at it again and I thought, whoa, what happened? Because it went from 44 then down to 24, and I thought, well, what'd you do with all those kids or all those children? Then I noticed that Wolf Meadow went to 30,000. So I wondered which, because then you said then that transitional camp, you didn't know what those numbers were going to be. So that. Yeah, the one at Wolf Meadow, because you said you didn't know what you would get there.
Well, what we've decided to do is provide transportation. We were able to work with transportation this week and find out exact cost for their fall and spring. So we increased this amount to provide transportation to those
To the middle school.
To Wolf Meadow.
Okay.
Okay, because that's what I was like, whoa, wait a minute, why? So that's what I was wondering, what was taking place. So you're not going to do that many for the transition, for the
We're only going to target students who need it
Okay,
instead of opening it up to all students.
okay,
So
for
we will
the,
be very strategic.
and are you gonna provide transportation
Yes,
to
ma'am.
them? Okay, but they will have transportation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, because I was wondering, okay, now which numbers are right and what happened? And that was my question. Okay.
ma'am.
All right, that's
Any other-
good.
Mrs.
Okay.
Carpenter, would you like to make the motion to approve the Title I plan as presented?
All right, I will make the motion to approve the Title I plan. then.
I'm going to second that.
Ms. Blackwell made the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, we're moving along here. I feel like we're on a moving sidewalk. 10.06, Mr. Louder, the Mount Pleasant utility easement.
Yes, ma'am. Any questions from what we discussed last week?
I make a motion, I'll make a motion, we approve it.
I'll
Is there a
second that.
Motion by Mrs. Carpenter, yes, a second by Ms. Blackwell. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Look at that, we almost made 3 hours on the dot. Only for a few more to come. I'll take a motion that the board convene in closed session to consult with an attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A3, and to consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A6. Mrs. Grimsley made the motion for to go into close.
Second.
Mr. Walter made the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will say goodnight to our audience in the room and on television. Have a good evening. Thank you for joining us.